Composers have the unique ability to creatively explore differences between cultures through the text, voice, and form and features which create cultural signifiers. This is evident in Rachel Perkins' 2001 musical film One Night the Moon, which follows the lives of the Ryans, a white Australian family who are faced with a crisis when their daughter goes missing in rural Australia, and the Indigenous tracker Albert, tasked with finding her. Set in the 1930s, the film reflects the stereotypical culture of white Australians and their prejudice towards different cultural groups, which was heightened in rural areas. Perkins captures these cultural identities through the film's use of voice and other cultural signifiers, and explores the ideas of racism, relationships, and the loss. The characters reveal their cultural identities through their interactions with others, as depicted through the film's use of voice and filmatic elements that showcase various cultural signifiers. During the opening scenes of the film, music and diegetic sounds allow for the audience to be submerged within the lives of the characters. This is interrupted by the sound of a horse and carriage, which establishes and symbolizes the Ryan's cultural power and dominance. This was representative of the contextual dominance of white Australian during the 1930s. This scene blends into an establishment of theocentric ideologies, which was common for rural areas of Australia, which were populated by white Australians. The voice revealed through the priest dialect, "We are united in brotherhood of man," is only represented to the white people in the church, and excludes the Indigenous Australians and their spirituality. Here, voice is used to signify the importance of the church and religion as an Anglo-Celtic ideology. I'm not having some darker lead in the search. Furthermore, racism is present throughout the film and is provocatively used to explore the differences between the different cultural groups. During their first formal meeting, Jim's use of repetitive possessive language such as "my property" and "my land" affirms the idea of historical white Australian ownership of land and property. This cultural perspective limits his ability to accept Albert's help in finding his missing daughter. The costuming acts as a cultural signifier which establishes a physical barrier between the two cultures. The tense interaction between the characters in the scene reveals their identities and the systematic racism common of the 1930s Australia. Voiced through the medium of racial slurs such as "no blacks on my land," "I'm not having some darky in the search," also highlights Jim's racist traits and reflects the typical white Australian historic mistreatment of Aboriginals. This land is mine. This land is me. By exploring the differences between cultures throughout the film, Perkins is able to represent an effective exploration of how voice is able to be used to show the complexity of relationships. The film's unique utilization of musical numbers creatively represents the culture of the characters and acts as a signifier of their identities. Following Jim's rejection of Albert's assistance, voice is used in the form of lyrical juxtaposition when Jim sings "This land is mine all the way to the old fence line." His higher register is symbolic to the white Australian culture identity, which views the land as an object of possession and metaphorically places his culture above others. This is hyperbolized by the accompanying classical instruments, which represent his Anglo-Celtic ethnicity, juxtaposing the metaphor in Albert's lyrical "This land is me" and a lower altitude to his Indigenous spirituality as he is connected to the land that shares with his Indigenous Australians. The character's interaction with the land also suggests the importance of relationships with the environment, which serves as an important cultural signifier within the film. Jim's house represents the classic white Australian dream, a red brick bungalow with a fence. The fence acts as a symbolic signifier of the cultural values of ownership of land, rather than being connected to it. Alternatively, Albert's house is constructed from natural materials and visually blends with the environment. The use of mise-en-scene during scenes of the film allows an audience to gain a deeper understanding of the two families' opposing identities and cultures as revealed through their relationship with the land. Perkins employs voice and cultural signifiers to delve into the concept of loss, which influences the unfolding events of the film and ultimately poses challenges to the cultural identities of the characters. The extreme close-up captures the guilt on Jim's face when Albert places his daughter in Jim's hands dead. It ultimately demonstrates the idea that his identity and cultural discrimination cost him his time with his daughter's life. The fading shot of Jim with the lyrics, "I don't have anything anymore," repetition represents the paradigm shift as the result of his ignorance and discrimination, which affected the search for his daughter Emily. The synergical storyline also shows the development of the characters as others are able to progress with their identity, however Jim lacks in his ability. Subsequently, One Night the Moon provocatively reveals the themes of racism, relationships, and loss to establish and explore the differences between white Australians and Aboriginals, which is characteristic of Australia's cultural history. Consequently, throughout the film, Perkins is able to utilize voice and other filmatic features to represent cultural signifiers, which ultimately reveal the differences amongst cultural groups.